Donald Trump has spent years calling Canada mean and nasty, and in the process, something unexpected has begun happening on the ground. Canadian consumers have quietly been turning away from American-made goods, not out of anger or organized protest, but simply through the choices they make at the counter and the dealership. And the clearest signal of that shift emerged in the auto market. For the first time since the 1990s, Canada imported more vehicles from Mexico, around 1.08 billion CAD in June, than from the United States, which dropped to roughly 950 million. A long era of deepening cross-border integration suddenly showed its cracks. Canada and Mexico, whose trade remains tariff-free, have been strengthening their commercial ties. And this summer, that shift became undeniable. Canadian imports of Mexican-built vehicles surpassed US-built ones for the first time in decades. That wasn't coincidence. Ottawa's 25% retaliatory tariff on certain US vehicles pushed American prices higher. A few $1,000s more per car, sometimes several thousand, was all it took. Models from Japan and South Korea, assembled right in Ontario and Quebec, slid naturally into the space that opened up. RAV4, CR-V, Civic, familiar names that suddenly came with a price advantage. Cambridge and Woodstock now produce the RAV4 and the Lexus NX and RX, the only factories in North America building them. Meanwhile, American brands, which once dominated the Canadian market, have been losing ground every year. Border state dealers in Michigan and New York saw something they had never experienced before. Their Canadian customers simply stopped showing up. On the surface, nothing looks dramatic, but beneath it, a major realignment is taking shape. A slow, quiet, almost subconscious boycott driven by economics rather than politics. And it forces a difficult question. In a deeply integrated regional economy, who ends up paying when the trust between markets quietly thins? Before we go further, consider subscribing so you don't miss what comes next, because the real turn in this story is just ahead. Trump loves to claim he stands with auto workers. Yet when Canadian workers walked off the job in 2019 for 40 days, he didn't lift a finger. He stayed silent. According to the union, he doesn't understand the auto sector or the people who keep it running. He recycles slogans, but when it mattered, he did nothing. And now Canada is responding to his approach by matching Washington's tariffs, a 25% duty on all US-built vehicles that fall outside the requirements of CUSMA. But that moment only accelerated a deeper problem already underway. Detroit's foundations in Canada had been eroding for years. Canadian auto production slipped to about 1.3 million vehicles in 2024, one of the weakest levels in decades. After the Detroit 3 scaled back their commitments, Ford's Oakville plant shut down following the cancellation of its EV overhaul. Stellantis wound down the Chrysler 300C in Brampton and delayed its Jeep restart. Ottawa pushed back. Stellantis lost half its duty-free quota, and GM saw nearly a quarter cut from its allocation for missing production promises. The union warns that Trump's agenda would surgically dismantle Canada's auto sector if left unanswered. And while Detroit's grip weakened, Toyota and Honda thrived. Their Ontario and Quebec-built vehicles were selling out. US-made models lingered on lots. Bit by bit, the Detroit 3 stopped looking like Canadian manufacturers, and Canadians adjusted their buying habits accordingly. If you'd like more deep dives into stories like this, hit subscribe so we can keep bringing them to you. Once American production in Canada thinned, the tariff shock did the rest. The new 25% Canadian counter-tariff on U.S. vehicles that don't meet CUSMA rules or rely on parts outside North America sent prices surging. Analysts estimated that production costs across the region could rise by $3,500 to $12,000 US dollars per vehicle. For many families, that alone reshaped what value meant. And with exemptions reserved for companies that actually met their investment commitments in Canada, Detroit bore the brunt. The effects appeared almost instantly. Cross-border auto freight through the Ambassador Bridge dropped by more than a third compared with the previous year. Fewer trucks, fewer shipments, a supply chain tightening in real time. In that environment, the price gap between American-built vehicles and those assembled in Ontario and Quebec wasn't just visible, it became the deciding factor. When one option jumps by thousands of dollars and another doesn't, the market rarely hesitates. As Canadians stepped away from US-made models, the damage landed not in Canada, but in America's industrial heartland. Michigan, which exports over $23 billion USD in goods to Canada each year, faced a sudden plunge in revenue. Parts suppliers in Ohio and Illinois saw orders shrink as fewer US-built vehicles headed north. Even engines shipped from Canada to US truck plants arrived with higher costs attached, raising prices in places like Kentucky. Border towns felt the shock. Dealerships, repair shops, and retailers who relied on Canadian customers watched them vanish. And the hardest truth for Washington is this: none of it is political. Canada didn't organize a boycott. People simply bought the cars that made financial sense. Markets don't negotiate. They just move. As the U.S. struggled to manage the fallout, Canada moved in the opposite direction. Investment, production, and consumer demand aligned in a rare moment of opportunity. Toyota and Honda now produce more than two-thirds of all vehicles in Canada, something no American brand has approached in years. Their steady output kept the industry afloat while Detroit scaled back. Auto parts manufacturing tells the same story. Sector GDP rose from roughly 8 billion to 10 billion CAD over the past decade, and employment passed 80,000 as supply chains deepened. Then came the EV surge. Since 2020, Canada has attracted more than 46 billion CAD in EV and battery investments, building a supply network rooted more in Canada and allied partners than in the US. Honda's 15 billion CAD EV ecosystem. Materials, batteries, assembly, is one of the clearest signals yet. Ontario and Quebec have turned their plants into high-efficiency hubs that kept prices stable just as US-made vehicles became unpredictably expensive. In a turbulent moment, Canada did something rare in the auto world. It kept production steady, prices level, and investment rising. All of this has produced a phenomenon no one officially names but everyone can feel: a silent auto boycott, not driven by outrage but by arithmetic. When US-built vehicles suddenly cost thousands more, consumers didn't protest, they simply chose differently. A few $1,000s in savings is a louder message than any political speech. A 5 to 10% price gap can flip market share almost overnight. And the effects reach beyond car lots. The decline of Canadian shoppers at US malls, gas stations, and dealerships signals a deeper erosion of trust in American products during a period of volatility. And that kind of shift is hardest to reverse. Silent boycotts don't have leaders, timelines, or negotiation points. They end only when the math flips back, and right now, it hasn't. If the trend continues, North America's automap could look very different. The US-centric system that defined the past century may give way to a new balance, with Canada and Mexico growing stronger as American production faces new strain. Canada's pivot toward vehicles built domestically by Japanese and Korean companies is solidifying a new manufacturing axis. EV investments are pouring north, turning Ontario and Quebec into the production centers Detroit once dominated. For industrial states, the consequences are unmistakable: slower output, thinner margins, and growing anxiety for workers. And for Detroit, the Canadian market that long acted as a dependable anchor is now quietly helping reshape the industry's center of gravity. Which leaves the larger question: is the United States ready for a future in which Canadian consumers, rather than American policymakers, shape the direction of North America's auto sector? The continent's auto system isn't breaking. It's reorganizing, quietly and steadily. And if one shift in buying habits can alter the structure of an entire industry, what other assumptions might be far more vulnerable than they look? Thanks for sticking through to the end. If you want to keep following these unfolding shifts, feel free to like and subscribe.